Are you a man looking for an intensive program to help you overcome sexually addictive behaviors? Gateway to Freedom is your answer. Gateway to Freedom is a 3-day workshop for men seeking to overcome any destructive sexual habits. Whether married, single, or divorced, Gateway to Freedom will help men regain hope for a new life of purity and real contentment. The workshop is conducted by experts in the field of sexual addiction recovery with decades of combined experience. Read testimonials of workshop alumni at gatewaymen.com. Get all the info and register online at gatewaymen.com or call 1-800-49-PURITY.
Hi, my name is Jonathan, and I'm the founder of the Gateway to Freedom Workshop. I want to personally invite you to be part of our next workshop coming up December 4th through the 6th in Texas. So call us today at 1-800-49-PURITY or visit gatewaymen.com.
Welcome to Pure Sex Radio, training men, educating women. Are you ready to get real and start living each day in purity? This dynamic program is designed to educate, encourage, and equip listeners with the tools necessary for living a life of sexual purity. Pure Sex Radio brings you the best in mobile talk radio. Listen to real-life struggles, learn how to overcome lust, pornography, and sex addiction, and get serious about purity. Your hosts for Pure Sex Radio are Jonathan Doherty and Stephen Cervantes. Jonathan is the director of Be Broken Ministries and founder of the Gateway to Freedom Workshop for Men. Stephen is the founder of the Hope Counseling Center. Visit us online at puresexradio.com. And now, please welcome Jonathan and Stephen on Pure Sex Radio.
Good day, radio listeners. Welcome to this week's edition of the Pure Sex Radio broadcast. We're glad to have you with us. My name is Jonathan. I'm here with Stephen. Stephen, how are you today?
Blessed. Thank you for asking.
Excellent. Well, we want to let you know about our Gateway to Freedom workshop. This is our 3-day intensive that we do all throughout the year in various locations around the country. And we've had hundreds of men come through this who are dealing with any kind of sexual struggle or stronghold, and they're just fed up. They're just saying, I don't want to keep going around this merry-go-round over and over and over again. And this workshop has helped many men break free from that destructive cycle. If you'd like to learn about the workshop and the locations and the dates of the upcoming workshop sessions, simply go to gatewaymen.com or call 1-800-49-PURITY. Well, Stephen, we are going to dive into a topic that I think in some ways makes men a little bit uncomfortable and tends to make women go, oh, yay, we're going to talk about this, right?
That's very true.
And guys, don't you dare go away from the radio. Do not shut this podcast off because...
Why? What are we going to talk about? What's the word that's so scary?
I want to say it in a manly way, but it's kind of hard. We're going to talk about intimacy.
Intimacy.
Now, don't turn the radio off, guys. You need to hear this.
So, I love this topic of intimacy because I think it is like the essence of who God is. Mm-hmm. Because the words come to my mind, oneness and bonding and union. And don't we want to be in a safe place where we're loved well and known well? And intimacy, isn't it just a great place to be?
It is when you're there. But the thing is, I think there's so many men especially who have no reference point for knowing, okay, what is intimacy? Okay, they might hear about the oneness within the Godhead of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and they see that community there of one. Mm-hmm. They hear the sermons about, the two becoming one flesh between man and woman, husband and wife. And they might have all this, head knowledge about what quote-unquote oneness is like, or intimacy. And yet then they turn around and they look in their own lives and they go, I'm not known. I don't really know anybody. I don't feel close to God. I don't have a clue experientially what intimacy really is. And that's what we're want to talk about here.
We're going to try and unpack this term a little bit. So I would start by saying I think intimacy occurs on different levels. Most people think sexual. Mm-hmm. You say intimacy, they think sexual. But there's emotional intimacy, there's physical intimacy, there's spiritual intimacy, and there's relationship intimacy. And so, because bonding can occur in all those levels, sexually, yes, bodies get together and enjoy each other, and there's a oneness. So that is intimacy, but that's only a part of it. There's the emotional part of it where two lives are shared and connected, and one falls down, the other helps pick them up. And when one celebrates, the other one joins in the celebration. When one grieves, we grieve together. There's physical, which is just comfort from another. And there's spiritual, which go to church. That's all worship. That's oneness and intimacy. And then in the marriage, in the family, in our relationships, we see a sense of a oneness and intimacy.
And it's interesting because there's only one of these contexts that God has basically said this intimacy is relegated to one type of relationship, and it's that sexual. That's the only one that he says that's relegated to marriage. So that's the only context in which you're to experience that type of intimacy. But when you look at emotional, physical meaning hugs and that kind of thing. When you look at spiritual, when you look at relational, he's saying, hey, listen, all human relationships, you can have that kind of intimacy. So I can have I can have emotional intimacy with other men when we get together on our Tuesday night groups and we're sharing our lives and we're digging in.
Yes.
And it's like, that's healthy. That's good.
And that's intimate. It's a sacred place where real struggles and griefs are shared.
I can have spiritual intimacy in the context of corporate worship at my church when we're all gathering together and we are intimate with God together.
Yes.
And I can certainly have relational intimacy with friends, other family members, my children. And so I think we need to, and I'm glad you're bringing this up this way, we do need to broaden our understanding of the context in which intimacy can be realized. Because I think when we narrow it down to, especially as men, when we say it's sexual, then we miss out on so many other dynamic relationships that we can have, real intimacy, that in fact provide the kind of health and safety that we need from all these other dysfunctional things we do with our sexuality. I mean, we've seen it in this ministry when guys begin to establish healthy intimacy with God and with others. What happens? They don't look at porn anymore. They don't start, they don't have affairs. They don't go down all these dark roads.
Cheap substitutes. That's what that is. When a guy does not understand intimacy, he's looking for false intimacy because he wants this thing, this seems like closeness. And so he finds porn or an affair where he feels special and connected, but it's sort of pseudo. It's not the real thing. And so you're right. You know what the cure for a sexual addiction is? Intimacy.
Yeah.
Healthy, bonding, true intimacy.
And guys, that's why we said don't turn the radio off. Because, you hear this and you're thinking, oh, man, you probably feel like it's a burden. You feel like, oh, this is going to be so much work. But what if...
That's true. That's what they're saying, groaning out there. Intimacy, oh, God.
But
I have to talk to her, oh, no. I have to listen to her, oh, no.
But here's the question I want to ask you. If it's true that the cure for your sexually addictive behaviors, your sexually unhealthy behaviors, is intimacy, then wouldn't it maybe be nice to understand what that is and how you can begin that journey?
Oh, now you're getting my attention here. You're perking them up out there now. So I had this discussion with you when we were getting ready, and you said, well, intimacy requires communication. And if anybody knows me, I always correct people when they say communication. We don't communicate, they say. And I say, you mean you don't talk, right? Because if you can say the problem in a way people understand, then, oh, you mean talking? I'm supposed to be doing more talking. I should do more. Yeah, do more talking. Okay, good. Right. But when somebody says communicate, everybody communicates all the time. Communication theory says you cannot not communicate. If you show up, you're communicating with your eyes, the way you breathe, how you sigh, how you carry yourself, whether you turn away or towards.
And what's funny is, right as I said it, I caught Steve before he could say that to me, because I said, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say talking, but I'm holding my ground on this when it comes to communication, building intimacy, being the full spectrum of communication. Absolutely, it requires talking. You cannot go to the deepest levels of intimacy with another person without talking. But I do think there are little things that you do communicate on a level that is not necessarily talking, that also builds intimacy. Gazes, touch, body language. There are other things that can communicate intimacy.
Rubbing my feet,
right?
Rubbing her back, scratching my head.
And so I think we have to, yes, we don't want to ignore talking. And guys, that's for us, because typically we're the ones that don't want to get into long conversations, and we struggle with that because we don't know what to say.
Hey, I grunt real good.
Right? Yeah.
What?
The guys heard
Go
you.
ahead, talk. What do you want to talk? Talk.
The guys out there heard you say, rub her back, and they're saying, I'm in for that. I'll do that, but have a conversation about, a hard day, and that's another topic.
So you're spot on, Jonathan. I concede the point. Communication is essential because it is looking and touching. And we were talking about in the previous show about when you're in a crowd at a party, look for your wife and smile at her. Make her catch you looking. Let her catch you looking at her, and just smile at her, and you'll just mess with her. But she'll feel like, oh, you're looking at me? You're like, what? Me? I'm important? Me? That's intimacy.
Yeah.
So it's the whole spectrum of how we use ourselves, moving towards and bonding, or moving away from it and detaching.
So first, that's our first point, is that really building intimacy requires communication on all of its levels. And by the way, this is true, not just with your spouse. If you're going to build deep intimacy with your children, with your friends, with your brothers and sisters in Christ, with your community, you have got to communicate. You've got to connect. And certainly, again, talking is probably the primary way in which you're going to communicate. I also think, though, that if you're going to learn how to be intimate, this idea of closeness, connection, oneness, all of that, it takes time. I mean, Stephen, would you say that any intimate relationship you've ever had in your life happened in a weekend?
No. Fun.
Yeah.
Adventure, new, different, but not intimacy. So your point is intimacy takes time. You have to build over time, lay foundation of safety and of interest and dialogue.
And I think what I mean by this is, I've heard it said before that the word intimacy, if you want to try to understand it in terms of like a quick definition, you could break the word down to into me see. The idea is to let somebody see inside of me, the real me, everything, all of the brokenness, the weakness, the sinfulness, the struggle, all of that. And so if you think about that, wherever you are in life, you have history, you have wounds, you have ideas, opinions, thoughts, you have all of this, emotion. This is all part of who you are. And so therefore, for somebody to actually know you, think about how long that takes to really unpack. Also think of how long that takes to then unpack in another person. So if you're going to build this kind of relationship, it's just going to take a long time. But Stephen, let me ask you this. For those in your life who you would say throughout your lifetime you've had an intimate relationship with, would you say it's worth it to take the time to build an intimate relationship?
Absolutely. And, like best friends and family members that you stayed close to over the years, and schoolmates that have been on the journey forever with you. I was reading this article, and it said 5 regrets that people have when they die. And one of them is I lost contact with my friends. Over the years, I just let the contact slip. And I'd sure like to know how they're doing. And they were on the journey with me, you know. That's intimacy.
And I think that's so important because, you know, especially for guys who are out there that are just feeling stuck, they're drowning, they've probably got some depression. There's just this feeling of, oh man, it's going to be so much work to get away from pornography or to do all this. And I think they look a lot of times as in the journey in a very mechanical and functional way, meaning I see how I'm actually to a point where I can see how I'm destroying my life through all of these selfish, self-centered, you know, isolating behaviors. But they look at the journey away from that as something about, okay, I've just got to sort of mechanically go in this other direction. And I think if they can hear that
the goodness, the sweetness,
there are men out there that know what it is to be in an intimate relationship, to see the value of that, to see, listen, it's not trading one hard journey for another hard journey that has no benefit to it. I mean, think about it. The hard journey you're on right now, guys, it's leading to it's leading to, consequences. Negative consequences.
Right.
This is a hard journey to build intimacy, but the benefit far outweighs the time required in the journey.
And it's peaceful and it's restful and it's safe. That's what intimacy creates, a safe place. So in one of the points I'm reading off the list here is someone knowing the depth of who I am. And it's interesting to me how a lot of people really don't know themselves very well. And so they get in arguments with other people, or they withhold, or they avoid, or they watch a lot of entertainment, but they don't read and learn and explore, trying to understand themselves, their strengths and their weaknesses. And so that's part of what intimacy is understanding we all have strengths and weaknesses, and it's okay. And I can live with yours. I understand you have some weaknesses. That's not all of who you are. You're more than that. So I wrote down how. Now, I'm talking about emotional intimacy now, right? Because we're not going to go through each of these areas and talk about physical intimacy or the relational. You know, you go to a marriage seminar, work on relationship stuff. I wanted to talk a few minutes about creating emotional intimacy. Because what we know with sex addicts, they're emotionally slow. They're behind. They didn't spend time developing themselves emotionally. So when you say, okay, step up now and bring out your emotionally developed self, it's like, I avoid, I run, I deny, I hide. Is that true, John?
And so part of this journey is, and I would put it this way, in terms of this idea of beginning to understand yourself, is you're going to be developing emotional depth. Because I think what ends up happening is, man, especially the pornography and all of that just superficial kind of false intimacy, what that eventually creates is very, very shallow people emotionally. To the point where you really don't even think you have any emotional depth. And in some ways, you've been so stunted that functionally it does work out that way. You just, your wife is looking at you and saying, hey, listen, it was, the 16-year-old you was fun, but I'm kind of looking for the 35-year-old you now, and where are you? And you're like, he doesn't exist. There is no emotional depth. And so this journey, this is part of the benefit. It's not just the benefit in the relationship, because I think that's wonderful to be able to do life together and to have somebody that's journeying with you and part of that journey. It is also about developing emotional depth within yourself to where you are starting to unpack and explore within yourself. Like, who am I? And what are some of the answers to why I've done some things, and how can I go on a journey of healing and really knowing me and releasing from shame and becoming, filled with goodness and purpose, and that's a wonderful journey to be on.
And I love the way you said that, a journey of healing, because that's what it takes to get to intimacy. You can't hide behind brokenness and addiction and self-centeredness and shame and guilt and think you're going to get to intimacy. You have to go on a journey of healing, and you look up one day and you're more honest and open, and you're sharing that with someone else. And intimacy is the new context versus the old hiding, running. I wanted to make a list of when I thought intimacy occurred and sort of go over that list. And so the first thing I wrote down was grieving. Grieving. When one person is grieving, they're vulnerable. They've lost something. They're sad. They can't fix it. They can't take it back or make it better. And just think about a bad situation. Somebody's house burns down, or there's a car accident and somebody's damaged, or somebody gets old or sick, or just think about all the reasons they lost their job, something that makes them very sad. If you can enter into that sadness with them, that's an opportunity for intimacy. Or you can go logical. Well, it's going to get better. We just have to get over it, just have a positive mindset, and just get on with life and suck it up, or go into grieving. Right? And so grief is an opportunity for intimacy. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, because it means that you are present, even if you don't, and especially because you don't have solutions. And to me, that's a different dynamic of relationship than somebody that is just looking to try to shift circumstance. In other words, I think of it this way. The Bible says to rejoice with those who rejoice and to mourn with those who mourn.
Yes.
If somebody is grieving, we are not called to make them happy. We're actually to enter into the very state that they're in. And to me, that is a deep level of intimacy, because you're saying, listen, you don't have answers. You are in a difficult place. You are feeling the depth of pain, and I'm not going to bring any solution, but I am going to bring myself.
Right.
And
yes.
I'm going to just be here with you. That's huge in terms of building intimacy. Right? Yeah.
So the next thing I wrote down was adventures. When you go on an adventure, it takes you into the unknown, and you're out of your comfort, and so you're going to make mistakes and go forward and succeed and fail and do the right thing and then take the wrong turn, and so I think there's an opportunity for intimacy in the changes that we face, the adventures we face in life.
This past summer, my family and I, we took a road trip from Texas to Arizona to go to the Grand Canyon. And that was an adventure for our family. And the Grand Canyon was a great adventure, but the ride there and back, the whole thing, we were seeing things we'd never seen. We were doing it all together. And I promise you that will be a family memory for our lifetime in terms of
very
building.
Intimate,
exactly.
right?
We were, trips like that, there's always memories. There's always certain little things that happen that will become part of family lore.
Right.
There's certainly family jokes that originated out of that, and that's all part of our family bonding and building a deeper intimacy.
Yes, and so that adventure opportunity presents itself at different times in job changes and moving, and that it's an opportunity for intimacy. I think in storytelling, there's an opportunity for intimacy. Just now, you started to tell a story about the Grand Canyon. And you know what? Every listener that has a Grand Canyon story, you sent us back into our stories. Mm-hmm. I remember our road trip to the Grand Canyon.
Right, yeah.
And so then we can share that experience. That's intimacy. We can bond over and what happened, and when was it good, and when was it scary, and when was it bad, and intimacy.
And that's one of the reasons in our ministry, one of our core values is story. Mm-hmm. And Stephen, think about it. How many guys that come to our workshop, when we invite them to unpack their story and they get it out, many of these men actually tell us it's the first time they've ever told anybody their full story. And what is every single one of those guys' response? It's relief. It's it's almost a sense of joy.
And
it's like
intimacy rises from these men.
Yeah.
5 guys that would sit together before the workshop started and eat, and they would talk nervously and talk about what they did for work. Then later, as they tell their stories, they relax and they're just cutting up like little boys.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And that's just it. So story, I think, creates an atmosphere of safety to where you can be real. And that's just it. I think that's why the Bible is full of stories. It's real broken people that are changed and transformed by the grace and power of God. And so story is huge.
So when someone needs help or support, it's an opportunity for intimacy because I lost my job, don't have enough money, my car's broken down, can't buy a new tire. I'm struggling and I'm vulnerable. And it's an opportunity to bond and meet that person in their broken place and offer someone that's needing some help, which then is another piece of intimacy.
And I think this is one of the key reasons why we say that the cure for your porn addiction is intimacy, is because guess what happens when you take the focus off yourself and begin to look for opportunities to meet the needs of others, is you not only are moving away from this self-centeredness, you're also actually moving toward building intimacy, because you're seeing, as I meet this person's need, what's happening? I'm connecting with them. I'm getting to know them. There's a bond there that can be formed around this particular need that could build a relationship that can help build intimacy.
And what most folks probably don't know is the men that come in for help, they're the loneliest men. They're the most disconnected men. The men that are caught up in addiction are doing it alone. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you say the cure is relationship, intimacy, closeness, oneness, versus hiding alone and doing your little deeds. So scary times in our life when things are uncertain, or sick times when somebody struggles with a sickness that we just can't give an aspirin and cure, and they have a sickness and they need to sort of talk it through and work it out. And what does it mean? If you can be there when somebody's scared or sick and be there in that moment, intimacy can rise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would put it this way too, and maybe this kind of encapsulates all of that, is just you can't really build intimacy without trials. There just have to be things that will challenge that relationship that you press through. I have never met a person that talks about a truly intimate relationship, whether it be with a spouse or a friend or another family member, where they say, we've had no trouble whatsoever. No. When you talk about those bonds that are created that simply cannot be broken, 100% of the time you will hear this, man, let me tell you about the fires we've gone through. Let me tell you about where our relationship was hanging by a thread. Let me tell you when I wanted to never speak to that person again. I mean, just you will hear those kinds of stories, because I think the strength of the bond is forged through making it through those trials. So the presence of trials themselves doesn't ensure intimacy. But if you will press through those trials together,
that's
then
right.
You will form an intimacy that just cannot be broken. I mean, my wife and I are a testament to that. Listen, logically, our relationship was done. There's no reason why we should still be together. And yet, because of what we went through and because of what happened as a result of all of that turmoil and trial, there is no way we could be separated now. There's a bond that is unbreakable.
That's good. So let me say one other thing. It's gratitude. Mm-hmm. I think people can bond over gratitude.
Yeah.
And it's pleasurable bonding when you express gratitude.
So intimacy is the cure to your sexual addiction problem. So if you'd like more information about how you can just press on in this journey of building intimacy, please contact us. We'd love to help you. And until then, we look forward to seeing you back here again next week on the Pure Sex Radio broadcast.
Pure Sex Radio is paid for by Be Broken Ministries. Visit us online at puresexradio.com.